stories. Welcome to Deep Terror. Tonight, we open the doors to 3 true Halloween stories. Cases so disturbing that even investigators still refuse to talk about them.
Halloween, a time for candy, costumes, and spooky fun. But for some, the line between festive frights and real-life horror becomes terrifyingly blurred. Tonight, on Deep Terror, we're redimming the lights and sharing 3 stories that prove the scariest monsters are the ones who walk among us. These aren't tales from a movie. These are chillingly true accounts of Halloween nights that went horribly wrong. So, lock your doors, check your windows, and settle in, because these stories will remind you why you should always be cautious on the most haunted night of the year. Our first story comes from a woman named Chloe, who was a teenager back in the late 90s. Halloween was her favorite holiday, and that year, she and her best friend, Sarah, were thrilled to be old enough to go trick-or-treating without their parents. They lived in a quiet, safe-feeling suburb where everyone knew each other, dressed as a witch and a vampire. They set out with their pillowcases, giddy with excitement. The evening started perfectly. The air was crisp, Jacko. Lanterns flickered on every porch, and their bags were getting heavy with candy. As it got later, most of the younger kids had gone home. Chloe and Sarah decided to hit one last street, a cul-de-sac at the edge of their neighborhood that was known for giving out the best full-sized candy bars. As they approached the cul-de-sac, they noticed it was strangely dark. Only one house at the very end had its porch light on, casting a long, eerie glow. It was a large, older house that always seemed a bit neglected. They hesitated for a moment, but the promise of premium chocolate was too strong. They walked up the long driveway. There were no decorations, just that single, bare bulb shining above the door. They rang the doorbell. After a long pause, the door creaked open. A man stood there, not in costume. He was tall and thin, with a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "Trick or treat," they mumbled, suddenly feeling uneasy. The man's smile widened. "I don't have any candy," he said, his voice raspy. "But I have something better inside. Come on in." A cold dread washed over them. Every instinct screamed at them to run. Sarah grabbed Chloe's arm. "No, thank you. We have to go," Sarah said, her voice trembling. They turned to leave, but the man took a step forward, blocking their path slightly. "Are you sure it's a real treat?" His eyes were fixed on them, intense and predatory. Chloe felt paralyzed with fear. It was Sarah who saved them. She suddenly shouted, "Look, it's my dad," and pointed frantically down the street. The man's head whipped around for a split second. It was all the time they needed. They bolted, sprinting down the driveway and not stopping until they were back on their brightly lit street, gasping for air. They never looked back to see if he followed. They told their parents, who called the police. The police went to the house, but the man claimed he was just being friendly and had invited them in for some homemade cookies, with no real evidence of a crime. Nothing was done. Chloe says she never went trick-or-treating again. She never forgot the look in that man's eyes, and the chilling realization of what could have happened if they had stepped inside that dark, quiet house. Our second story takes us to a small college town and a student named Mark. Mark was living in an off-campus apartment with a couple of roommates. For Halloween, they decided to throw a huge party. They decorated the entire place with fake cobwebs, skeletons, and a fog machine. The party was a massive success. Music was blasting, people were dancing, and everyone was having a great time in their elaborate costumes. Mark, dressed as a zombie, was mingling with the crowd. Around midnight, he noticed a guy he didn't recognize. This wasn't unusual for a college party, but something about this guy was off. He was wearing a simple, generic-looking clown mask. Kind you'd buy at any party store. It wasn't scary, just blank and expressionless. But he wasn't talking to anyone. He just stood in a corner of the living room, completely still, watching the party. Mark tried to shrug it off. Maybe the guy was just shy, but over the next hour, he kept seeing him. The clown would be in the kitchen, then by the back door, then in the hallway, always silent, always watching. He never moved when anyone was looking directly at him, but he seemed to teleport from one spot to another. Mark started to feel a prickle of unease. He asked his roommates if they knew the guy. None of them did. They all assumed he was a friend of a friend. The party started winding down around 2 a.m. As Mark was cleaning up, he realized the apartment was almost empty, but the clown was still there. Now, he was standing at the end of the long hallway that led to the bedrooms, just standing there, motionless, under the flickering hall light. Mark's heart pounded in his chest. "Hey man, the party's over," Mark called out, trying to sound confident. The clown didn't respond. He didn't even move. Just then, Mark's roommate, Dave, came out of his bedroom. He saw the clown and chuckled. "Dude, you're really committed to the character. Huh? Time to go home." Dave walked towards the clown, intending to clap him on the shoulder and guide him to the door. As Dave got closer, the clown slowly lifted his hand. In it, he was holding a knife. It wasn't a prop. The blade glinted in the dim light. Dave froze, his smile vanishing. Without a word, the clown turned and walked silently into the guest bathroom, closing the door behind him. Mark and Dave stood there, stunned into silence. They immediately called the police. When the officers arrived, they cleared the apartment. They opened the bathroom door. It was empty. The window was wide open, leading to a 2-story drop onto the lawn below. The clown was gone. They never found out who he was or what he wanted. For Mark, the most terrifying part was the silence. The man in the clown mask never said a single word, but his presence was a promise of pure, unexplained menace. Our final, and perhaps most disturbing story, comes from a paramedic named Rick. Working on Halloween night is always chaotic. You get a mix of genuine emergencies and alcohol-fueled foolishness. Rick and his partner were in the middle of a long, busy shift when they got a call. It was for a full victim at a residential address. It sounded routine. When they arrived, they saw a few teenagers standing on the lawn, looking pale and shaken. The front door of the house was open. "He's in the basement," one of the kids stammered. "We were exploring the abandoned house. He fell down the stairs." Rick and his partner grabbed their gear and cautiously entered the old, dilapidated house. It was clearly abandoned, with dust and decay everywhere. It smelled of mildew and rot. They found the basement door and headed down the rickety wooden stairs, their flashlights cutting through the oppressive darkness. At the bottom of the stairs, they found the victim. It was a teenage boy, lying in a twisted position on the concrete floor. At first glance, it looked like a straightforward, tragic accident. But as Rick knelt down to assess him, he noticed something was horribly wrong. The boy's injuries weren't consistent with a simple fall. There were strange marks on his body, and the position he was in just felt ... unnatural. As his partner radioed for police backup, Rick's flashlight beam swept across the basement. The kids had said the house was abandoned, but the basement wasn't empty. In the far corner, partially hidden by shadows, was a dirty mattress. Next to it was a small pile of what looked like trash-empty food cans, old clothes, and something else, a collection of dolls. They were old porcelain dolls, but they had all been deliberately broken. Their heads were cracked, their limbs torn off, their glass eyes smashed. A wave of nausea hit Rick. This wasn't an abandoned house. Someone was living here. As the police arrived and began to secure the scene, one of the officers found something in the boy's pocket. It was a page torn from a book, covered in strange, handwritten symbols. The investigation later revealed the horrifying truth. The kids hadn't just been exploring. They had been performing a ritual of some kind, dared by an urban legend about the house. The boy's fall wasn't an accident. The evidence suggested he had been pushed. But by who? His friends swore they were all at the top of the stairs when he fell. The person living in the basement was never found. They had vanished, leaving only their disturbing collection of broken dolls behind. Rick says he's been a paramedic for over 20 years, and he's seen a lot of terrible things, but he's never been able to shake the feeling of that cold, dark basement, and the terrifying thought that the kids weren't alone down there when their friend fell. 3 nights. 3 real experiences where the fun of Halloween was shattered by true horror. These stories remind us that sometimes the mask isn't part of a costume. Sometimes the real monsters are waiting just behind a stranger's door, in the corner of a crowded party, or in the shadows of a place you should have never entered. Thank you for joining us in the dark on Deep Terror. If you have a true scary story you'd like to share, let us know in the comments. Until next time, stay safe and be careful who or what you open the door to. Follow for more.